And we're recording. So once more, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Verto Education July Family Circle. The topic of today's event is money matters for students. So thinking about how to prepare your student as they prepare for their transition from high school to college and maintain their well-being when it comes to finances. As you know, and as Verto knows as well, the financial element is an essential part of your student's holistic well-being. And it can be a challenging topic for students and for families to talk about. So we're going to give you some practical tools and tips to think about how to help your student make some informed decisions when it comes to money, so that by the end of the semester, they feel confident and you feel proud of all of the growth that they've made and all the things they've been able to accomplish, having the right tools and information to make some good decisions about their finances. So my name is Mateo. I'm the community manager here at Verto. I organize events for students and families to get to know one another. So if this is your first event, welcome. Although I think many of you have joined previous events, so welcome back. I will also be on site in London. So and if any of your students are headed to London this semester, I'll be more than happy to welcome them for Discovery Week. I would love for folks to share in the chat as well. Where is your student headed for their fall 25 semester? And if your student is joining one of our channel schools after Verto, go ahead and share that in the chat as well, and let's see if we can make any connections. We usually do in these calls. We're also joined today by a special guest and someone who knows this topic very well. So Steph, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Staff Director, Student Onboarding and Financial Services. Maybe have met you in some of our other webinars, whether for students or families earlier this year, but wonderful to see you all. And just 1 month until students arrive. Very excited. Like Mateo, I've also been at Verto for many, many semesters now. I think this is like my 12th or 13th semester. I've spent some time on site, similar to Mateo, and several semesters preparing students for their pre-departure process to arrive on site. And similar to Mateo, I will also be in London for arrivals and Discovery Week. So look forward to meeting students and families there this year. We've put together a series of sort of ways to break down thinking about budgeting for the semester, and some tools, and as Mateo said, practical tips to start the conversation between you and your student. I always like to remind families that when it comes to whether it's paying for your semester or budgeting for your semester, there is no right way to do it. It's whatever is the right fit for your family. And so starting that conversation with empathy, transparency, and also some guidelines, being the parents and family members that are supporting your students, some guardrails is really, really helpful. And so hopefully this conversation and topic today will help us get started there. Back to you,
All
Mateo.
right. Thank you, Steph. So what we're going to cover tonight is first, we'll give you some introductions about how we think of financial well-being in the context of your students' self-authorship journey. So we'll sort of break it down as to what we've seen students learn in this journey during their time with Verto. Then we're to give you some practical advice and cost-saving tips around the highest ticket items when it comes to student spending and student decision-making with budget. We'll close with some question and answer, but we'll also do a roundup of other questions that folks have asked about budgets and financial planning. And of course, if you do have questions during the session, please make use of the Q&A feature so that Steph and I can keep track of all those questions as they come in. If you put it in the chat, we'll get jumbled up with all of the questions that we'll ask you to answer for us. So please make use of the Q&A and we'll do our best to answer those as we go along. All right. Also a heads up, items that we won't cover tonight in our session. We won't answer questions specific to the student visa process for Prague, Seville, or Florence. Those questions should be going to your student's student onboarding advisor or student onboarding at Verto Education if you don't know who that is. And we won't answer questions specific to what is the housing like in London or what is the meal plan in Seville. A lot of those questions are answered in our pre-departure enroll participant page. So you and your student can check those out. It has a lot of resources. We're going to dive into some of those because they are related to your student's financial well-being. But for questions related to your student's specific sort of circumstance abroad, we recommend you to check out the location resources page. Okay, so I mentioned we're going to use the chat. This is our first opportunity to learn from you. I want you all to imagine about the first time that you traveled on your own, your first year of college, or maybe the first year outside of your family's roof. What's one piece of advice that you wish you would have had? This is an exercise we often do here at Verto, as we put ourselves in the shoes of our students that we serve and thinking about where we were at, because we were all at this transition at one point in our life. So go ahead and share in the chat. What was your golden nugget that you've learned now after some years after this transition period that you wish your student, that you would have known in this transition? Maybe we can share with your student as well. No fees on your credit card, definitely. Yep, interest rates, international fees, right? Create a budget, okay, and keep to the budget. That's half the problem. The challenge is creating it. The other half is keeping the budget. What are some other pieces of financial advice that you wish you would have had during your transition from high school to college, or your first year traveling alone? Make friends with people you wouldn't typically gravitate to. That's great. That also is financial related. If you think about how friend groups spend money, we're going to talk about that as well. Financial pressures of, oh, all my friends are going to Ibiza for the weekend. What should I do? These are decisions that your student will make in community. Don't spend money you don't have yet, right? So with great responsibility, with great power comes great responsibility. I think the quote goes, that's a credit card. Try not to take out too many student loans if possible. Perfect. Okay, let's get a few more. Putting yourself in the shoes of your student. Keep a buffer allowance with your budget for any emergency. Definitely. You want that rainy day savings. Cell phones crack. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask folks to think about hamburger instead of filet mignon. Yeah, I mean, the filet mignon maybe once a month, but you know, when in Rome, you might want to save a little bit. Pay off credit card every month. Okay, these are good. Good. I'm glad that folks can put themselves in the mindset of where your students are at in this transition, and decisions they might be making or about to make as they get ready for the experience abroad. So I'll ask you to keep this in mind as we go through our presentation today. So a little bit about financial well-being at Verto, and we really do think of the financial aspect of well-being as integral to your students' overall well-being. And certainly the financial element will impact the mental elements, their free time, their sort of social element. And so we talk about financial well-being with students both before and while they're on site. So some things that your student can look forward to. In August, we're going to have location hangouts, and the topic will be about budgeting. We're going to give them a budget and a travel destination, and they're going to have to work together with a team to figure out how can they get there and spend a weekend there and keep under budget. This will be something that your student will play out in real life when they get on site. We also have, for each location on our location resources page, a document called Money in Your Location, and that gives you practical tips on the nearest ATM, exchange rates, things to keep in mind, local expenses. So definitely check out that resource with your student. Additionally, on that same page, we have phone plan tips, and we're going to get into that tonight, so I won't go over that. While your student is on site with us during Discovery Week, their first week on site, we're going to do a budget activity with them. So again, they're going to work with a team and sort of figure out how can they make their budget work for them, keeping in mind in their friend group in this scenario, not everyone has the same budget. So how can they be inclusive, thinking about our compassion value in our community? How can they be compassionate when they're making money choices? And this is going to be an ongoing discussion that your student can broach with their student success advisor. So as many of you know, students are broken up into care teams. It's sort of a smaller cohort within the larger cohort. And your student will be on a care team with one student success advisor who really looks after their well-being, keeping in mind the financial well-being is an integral part of their holistic well-being. So it's something that your student success advisor will be ready and happy to talk about with your student, thinking about, oh, I didn't spend the money that the way that I wanted to this first half of the semester. How can I change that, and how can you help me keep accountable to that? This is also, of course, financial well-being is an integral part of your students' journey to self-authorship. So we think about students on site with Verto as going through 3 different learning journeys. And we hope by the end, students will make progress along their journey in 3 different ways. So the first is, how do I know? Which is to say, your student will likely come into practice of, man, I had a certain idea about how money works, and now that I'm an adult and I'm spending it on my own, it might play out a little bit differently. So how do I know what I know about how to spend money, and how can I use it in the way that actually suits me? The other element that to keep in mind here, as someone had mentioned, is spending money in the context of a community or in a friend group. So how does money play a role in friendships and weekend travels? How can I maintain healthy relationships with those around me while being realistic and honoring the budget that I came with, and sort of working within my means? So financial well-being is, of course, an essential element of being a college student, of in anyone's sort of self-authorship journey. And we hope that your student and anticipate your student will learn something or other about their financial well-being and thus themselves as they prepare for the next phase after Verto. So some things that we've learned over the years, as Steph and I mentioned, we're like some of the originals here at Verto. We were here when it was much different, and things that we've observed of students spending money and their habits is, first, there's a learning curve. So your student, as they transition from high school to college, and perhaps have had the love and support of you helping them with meals and with expenses and with emergencies, it's going to look a little or maybe a lot different when they're on site. And this learning curve is natural. It's whether they were abroad or not. This is a part of being a college student and learning how to be an adult. And so we know that some students arrive already confident. Perhaps your student was working the summer and they've had practical experience managing their own money. For others, this will be an entirely new experience. And so some of the key learning moments around the semester, first is students come with a finite budget, and perhaps they spend more of it than they should have or have the means to by the time they get to midterms or even the first part of term. And then all of a sudden we're thinking, oh, how do we adjust our budget now that we have less means than we anticipated? Another big item is cooking versus eating out. This is one that quickly eats away at a student's savings. It's very tempting to eat out at any of our amazing locations that offer an incredible gastronomic scene. At the same time, your student hopefully will learn how to cook at home, cook with their roommates, because this is one of the key ways that students can save money while they're abroad. And lastly, learning to say no to expensive group plans. So as I mentioned, this relationship, using money within relationship building is really important. And oftentimes students might have to say, ooh, do I stay in Seville this weekend, or do I go on this maybe expensive trip that other people have organized and seems interesting to me? So these will be choices that your student will be making throughout the semester. And of course, you'll be accompanying them and supporting them, or maybe checking in with them and being like, hey, I don't know if you were supposed to spend that money this weekend. So it's, as I said, a challenging conversation, but the more we can do to front load it, the easier it is to talk about. All right, so we're going to get into some practical budgeting tips around the different elements of line items that students typically spend money on. So maybe, Steph, I'll let you talk a little bit more about first where folks can find the location resources, and then also some of our practical tips.
Sure. So location resources, I'll drop that in the chat again, and each location has thanks Mateo, specific information for, if we scroll down to London, for example, you'll see that we have the Money While Abroad in London. So the very last link for each location is Money While Abroad, but very specific to your location. So please check that out. It's several pages of detail that we're not going to go through here, but a great resource for you and your students. Additionally, other resources on the location page that have to do with money, though are not directly with money in the name, are phone guidelines. So using your phone in England, that's up a little higher. There we go. And that one has to do with communication. One person mentioned it in the chat about, there's many different ways and that you can communicate with, or your student's going to be communicating with you. And just like transportation, just like eating, different ways to communicate also have different costs associated with them. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And so that'll bring us into the first line item, communication. Communication above everything is key. Communication for students with their families while they're abroad, with on-site. And so let's start there of setting the basic of, this is something that you may see this cost more quickly, because oftentimes students may be on your phone plan. So you have a few different options. One is to bring an unlocked phone and put in a local SIM card or an eSIM card with a local on-site carrier. The key here is unlocked. So if your phone is a phone that is not yet paid off, maybe you've bought it for your student as part of a family plan, where you pay every month the service and some of the cost of that phone will not be unlocked, and therefore you will not be able to use a local SIM card. So that's really important to know and to understand, because it is required by Verto that all students have a phone that can connect to data at any point in every single point in the semester. They cannot only have a phone that communicates via Wi-Fi. Look into your phone options. Phone plans and carriers in Europe are much more affordable than in the United States. So the cheapest way by far to ensure that your student can always communicate and connect with you, whether it's via WhatsApp or FaceTime or however you are going to plan to communicate, is by ensuring that they have a local SIM card with data on it. And that might look like, I'm not even kidding you, for unlimited data, it might look like 20 euros a month. It's very affordable compared to the United States. But again, that is only an option if the phone is unlocked. So that's the homework that you need to do now, is checking, is the phone unlocked? If your phone is not unlocked, international phone plan with home carrier. This is an option, and this will very quickly become very expensive. Typically, the way it works is it's might be $5 or $10 a day the second that you start a message, whether it's a FaceTime, text message, phone call, that's using that plan, so that's not on Wi-Fi. So anytime your student wants to message you, message another student on the program, message the program, needs to call for, hopefully not, but needs to call the emergency phone, whatever that is, that's going to initiate that charge. So as you can imagine, students are on site for 103 days. If you do 103 times $5 or $10, depending on your phone carrier and the phone plan you have, that will become very costly. So that brings us to option number 3 of, if you are in the category where your student's phone is not unlocked, you may want to look into purchasing a temporary, a cheap smartphone on Google, that is not the fancy iPhone, but that you're putting in that SIM card or that eSIM, because that, again, may actually end up being much more affordable than using the international phone plan. It will allow the students more easily to sign up and use like all the different offers and things that can occur on site, make friends locally. When you have an international phone number, it's a little bit limited. So most students will typically go with getting a SIM card or an eSIM. They may start with the international phone plan and realize that's not practical after some period of time. And that's very easy to get the pay month by month ones, and on-site staff will assist with that. Over to you, Mateo. Okay. You want to do this?
No, you go for it. You're on a roll.
All righty. The next really important factor before we get into how much should people budget, we need to know, well, how are they even going to get money to begin with? So how do debit and credit cards work abroad? ATMs to withdraw cash from a debit card, that is definitely the best bet. So you'll want to make sure in this case that you have let your bank know that you will be in blank country for the amount of time abroad. This way the banks don't put a hold on the account when they get nervous about seeing a transaction there. Important to note, most US debit cards will have a transaction fee and potentially even a foreign transaction fee. What some students, I myself, when I was a student, I myself still when I travel abroad, do in this case is you take out a larger bunch of money than just what you need at that moment in time. And this is a great way also to practice your budgeting. If your goal is, example, 200 euros a month. So take out the 200 euros at once and you stash it away. And now you know, okay, I have 50 euros I can spend each week or whatever that looks like. So it's a great way for budgeting as well. Venmo and Zelle are generally US centric, but Apple Pay and Google Pay you will find commonly abroad. You may also, your student may have a credit card. Not all students have credit cards, but they may. And again, like someone put in the chat, make sure you know what your credit card foreign transaction fees are. And again, harder to budget with a credit card than it is with having that cash. So but having multiple means is always a good idea. We always recommend students bring some US dollars in cash with them, not to use necessarily on site, but this is a great emergency source. So let's say students lose their card, or this has happened to me. I speak from experience. ATMs work differently, and you go to in different countries and you put your cash card in to get the cash. And in the US, the ATM spits back out your card right away. But that's not true in all countries, and you might forget your card. Yep. Well, now you have a problem because you can't get any more money until you can get that card back or get a new one mailed to you. So having a bit of US cash stashed in a safe place in their room is always a great emergency sort of deposit for in case of scenarios like that. We mentioned ensuring that your banks know that they're traveling, and students do not open local bank accounts. Generally, you need like longer residency. It becomes very complicated. There's extra fees, so that's not recommended for semesters. All right. A few notes and things to think about that, in the era of digital technology, some things have gotten easier and some harder. So on one hand, it's very easy to travel and check we have our banking apps on our phone and everything like that. But on the other hand, with the era of two-step authentication, it can actually become a little bit complicated because sometimes you have to authenticate purchases or payments. I had this problem when I was in Portugal last summer. My credit card wanted me to authenticate like nearly every single payment, but I couldn't do that because I couldn't get the text messages and I hadn't planned ahead. So think about some of those things beforehand. Maybe it's worth getting a Google Voice number where they can receive text messages, or can they set up working with your bank to understand how that works. So that was just a specific card I had. My other cards don't function that way. Another thing to plan in advance, can someone send money to the student's account in an emergency? Or understanding how Western Union works, etc. So those are great things to always, again, you don't want to rely on that, but you want to have a backup plan. And here are some resources listed that some families have shared in the past. They like Revolut or Wise for debit cards that can hold multiple currencies. So we at Verto, we can't refer any of those, but these are tips and tricks that other families have used in the past.
Cool. Thank you, Steph. So the next question that often comes up in pre-departure is, how much money should my student bring with them? And that really is going to depend. So I wish we could give you a clean-cut answer of this is the dollar amount that your student should bring with them, but it's going to depend on a variety of factors, including how your student will choose to spend their money, what type of lifestyle, how much they want to travel on the weekends, whether they're excited about cooking or not. So these are questions that you should ask your student to get a more realistic idea as to how much money you should be bringing. We've asked alumni in the past to give us sort of a realistic number, though, or at least a range. And you could find that range, again, as Steph had mentioned, in each location, we have a money while abroad sort of document. At the top of that, that's going to give you an estimate of what students in the past have spent. Now, your student might spend more or they might spend less. This is entirely up to their sort of lifestyle and the different ways that they're going to be spending the money. But this is sort of an average that your student can expect to be spending while on site with us. So here for Seville, it says, for example, about 240 to 400 euros per month. Here's a breakdown for each location. Something to consider also is that starting starting this fall semester, all sites will have some form of a meal plan. So you can see here the breakdown of how often that's included and on what days. And you can get some other insights here about what we recommend for food budget to supplement the sort of meal plan that's included with your students' program cost here. So again, this is going to fluctuate or depend on your students' cooking at home habits. And so it's, of course, going to be on the higher end if your student is eating out or ordering from apps locally that they can order food to their residents. But just sort of to give you a general idea of what students in the past have spent. Anything else that you wanted to mention here, Steph?
No, I'd just say that the visit, like Mateo said, the biggest factors that will make this vary is eating out versus cooking, using public transportation versus using a taxi or Uber everywhere, the amount of shopping that they do. Some students really like shopping. Shopping abroad can cost different amounts. And then, of course, independent travel. So all four of those are factors that will really vary based on the student and the choices they make.
Cool. Thank you. Steph, I think I'm going to let you take this topic too about health insurance.
Sure. So staying healthy is both, like Mateo said, financial well-being. We want physical and mental well-being as well. And academic well-being. They all tie together into a student having a successful experience. So as a reminder, health insurance is provided and required by Verto for every Verto student. So we provide the health insurance for students, and you can find the brochure. We'll drop the link in the chat in just a moment. Students are registered for this health insurance typically in about the first 10 days of August, so they'll be getting all of their health insurance materials prior to arrival on site. With the program, and the dates of the insurance are program start date to program end date. Note, health insurance is different than travel insurance, and we can talk about that a little bit later if anyone has questions on that. The health insurance, look through the plan, please. And I'm trying to summarize here, but essentially there's a $75 deductible, and it's pay as you claim. So you can, after that, so you reimburse for anything from minor injury or illness, and prescriptions. Major injury or illness can be direct billed, through the provider the student is at to, the insurance directly. So, what this means is, unlike in the US where you may come away with a very expensive bill at times, usually when it ends up becoming a major, you know, overnight hospitalization or something of that sort, surgery, etc., most of the time the insurance provider and the facility where your student is at work together, and your student doesn't come away with that cost. Really different than in the US, there is no in-network or out-of-network. So the insurance is valid at every single medical provider for the duration of the semester, regardless of the location that your student's studying in. So your student is studying in Seville, and they go to France for the weekend, and unfortunately they get bronchitis and need to see a doctor. It makes no difference whether they see the doctor in Seville or in France. They still can see the doctor, pay out of pocket, and claim the reimbursement, and you get all that reimbursement back. So it's a general health insurance for while they're abroad, not location specific. And I think that's really all on that page. So all that to say, it is good to budget a little bit of money for students' physical well-being. Whether that's you know there's a $75 deductible that you won't be getting back, but you want to budget a little bit in case of emergency.
Okay, question in the chat, Steph. What is typical out-of-pocket expense if they need to see a doctor, for example, if they have the flu?
Yeah, this will really vary by location. I'd recommend it's something that you can have your students ask at the location orientation, or it'll depend what kind of doctor. So kind of like here in the US as well, if you go to an urgent care versus emergency room versus a doctor appointment, those are all going to cost different. Similar abroad. The other thing is there's also telehealth that doesn't cost anything, where they can, very similar to the US, you can describe your symptoms, they can prescribe you etc. So check out the insurance brochure. But typically the $75 deductible is meant to be like for your first cover at least a good portion of that first visit. So it'll depend. Do we cancel your US health insurance? No, I wouldn't cancel their US health insurance because they're going to be gone for just 4 months. The two don't interfere with each other, just like when you at home can have a primary and a secondary. It's just that in this case, the primary will be their Verto health insurance while they're abroad.
One more question, Steph, about health insurance. What
Sure.
about if they need prescription refills for maintenance medication if their supply runs out?
Yeah, prescription refills, great question. So please first make sure that you've put this on your health on the students have put this on their health history forms, very important. Sites are reviewing those health history forms, and most of the time what we recommend is that you bring the maximum amount that let your doctor know you'll be away for 100 days. Some prescriptions you can bring the full amount, which is wonderful for the entire time. And we'll talk more in orientations about bringing that in the original containers with the prescription in the carry-on. If you can't bring the entire amount, please let your student onboarding advisor know, and the student onboarding advisor will work with the on-site teams to understand you need to see a doctor to get another prescription for perhaps like that exact medicine or a generic of that medicine, or is it just that you need to bring a prescription that can be translated overseas? So the on-site teams will know a lot about that, and as long as you have that on the health history form, we'll be able to help you out.
All right, thank you, Steph. I see another question in the Q&A related to insurance. So maybe if you want to answer that one in the chat, and we'll keep our presentation going. Or do you want to answer it live?
The health insurance is emergency evacuation insurance as well. Emergency evacuation could be due to natural disaster, political, or medical emergency. It does have to be actually deemed by insurance a medical evacuation. So that's different than you saying, oh, my student's not well, I want to take them home. That would not be covered. It has to actually be deemed by an insurance company, just like it would be here, if you were having a medical evacuation of sorts, a medical evacuation, but that is covered, yes. And it does work. We have, unfortunately, had to use it one time for a medical evacuation, and it does work.
All right. Well, thank you, Steph, and thank you for the questions. So now we have a question for you. I'd love for you to share in the chat. Given the information we've shared with you so far, or what you know or assume about your students' spending habits and their financial well-being, what are the budget topics that you want to address with your student before they leave? So go ahead and share those in the chat. They could be line items, they could be topics you want to discuss, they could be habits, they could be ideas. Budget topics you want to address with your student. Weekend spending, that's a great one. So students will make choices about how they want to spend their free time. It is not the expectation or the culture of Verto that students have to be traveling every weekend. It's tempting, especially for our students that are living in Europe, that have airports that get them to other countries in a matter of hours or inexpensive buses. But I want to say that there's no expectation that your student is going to be jet setting across Europe for the entire semester. It's totally fine if they want to settle into their location. They'll only be there for 14 weeks. And our on-site team loves it when students actually take the time to get to know their site. They have lots of experience and tips, and most of our on-site staff are from those locations and have lots of recommendations for your students to explore the region on a budget for free or for affordable things to do around. So there's no expectation for your student to be traveling all weekend, but that's certainly a conversation you want to have with your student before they get on site. Alcohol consumption. Yes, that's an easy one to get carried away with how much money you spend, especially thinking about peer pressure and, oh, if my friend is drinking, then I should be drinking too, and I should be keeping up. That's something that your student will have to make choices about. Yes, they're legally 18, so they can drink in our host countries. That doesn't mean that they have to have unhealthy habits that impact both their financial and their physical well-being when it comes to alcohol consumption. So it's definitely a conversation that we'll be having with your student, and we'll be appreciating you to have with your student as well. It helps to hear things a couple times from different people. Basic outline of how much he thinks is reasonable. Yeah, I mean, for some students, they've never thought about this, and that's totally okay. This is a semester of first times for a lot of things. We know that. And so this might be the first time that your student is thinking critically about how they want to spend their money. That's a perfectly great conversation to have with your student of what are different areas of money that you spend, and how do you actually want to spend your money, and how can you get as close to that as possible throughout the semester. How to handle when your friends don't pay you back or chip in. Totally. Luckily, the Gen Z lives in a generation where they have a bunch of apps on their phone that they could Zoom money to each other like nothing, and it's all digital. But yes, when the friend group decides to put the Airbnb on someone's card, how does everyone get paid back in that process? That's an important one for sure. Okay, well, I'm loving these topics. I'm glad. Here are some other topics that you might consider to discuss with your student. First, what is their budget for the semester? Did they work over the summer? Are they coming in with a set amount of money? How much are you sort of partnering with them when it comes to their spending habits? What expectations should they go in with so that they know I should stay within these limits? And why is that their budget amount? So again, is it because so that's the money that they're working with? Sort of family dynamics, you're going to want to have that conversation with your student before, so that before they start making these choices, they're informed and they can go in with a better sort of mindset of how they should be spending their money. How will they access money while they're overseas? So as Steph mentioned, do they have two-step verification set up to a US landline that they won't have anymore? These are important considerations. Or I heard of a student that because their Wells Fargo app, for example, or their banking app is connected to their US phone and they discontinued their US phone to get a local SIM card, they can't access their app anymore. So things like that, you're going to want to logistically go through with your student. While they're on semester, when you have the calls with them, whenever you get them on a call, I've heard from parents in the past, it's pretty hard to get students on a call. So I want to set expectations with you all. If you're not hearing that much from your student, that's totally normal, especially in the beginning when they're trying to absorb as much as they can of the semester. But when you do get them on the phone, make their budget be a topic that's safe to talk about with them. Ask them how they're spending their money. Are they happy with what they're spending their money on? Have they looked at their spending habits recently? What have they spent the most money on the past 2 weeks? Helping them sort of think through these things that if they just get in sort of pilot mode and start spending money the way that their peers do, or they think that they should, it can get fast. So you are the best person equipped to have those conversations with your students and thinking about their well-being. Some tips that we've heard from alumni: every semester, we have students fill out an end of semester survey where we ask them, what's a piece of advice that you wish you would have known or want to pass off to future students? And they often come up with advice around budgeting, actually. This is an important factor in how their semester shapes out. So as you can see here, alumni say, be wise, even if you're good with money, because there's always so much going on. There's so many tempting ways to spend your money. Take advantage of free activities that Verto organizes. It surprises us the amount of students that don't go on our optional excursions. Even our overnight excursions aren't 100% attended. These are excursions that have already been paid for with your student's program cost. And so have those conversations with your student when they go to their location orientation and they get their calendar for their excursions. Make sure that they're blocking off those weekends, because that's already paid for. Those are free trips that they can go on. And the opportunity cost there is they've already paid for it. And so there's a seat waiting for them to go to amazing locations that they don't take advantage of. Another really easy way to spend money on site is to Uber to class instead of taking public transportation or walking. As Steph put, in London, the Oyster card is included for our students, and for all of our other locations, students can walk to class or take sort of inexpensive, in some locations, they have like a bike that you can rent or things like that. So consider Uber costs as a really important part that can eat away at your student savings if they're not careful and if they don't plan their days right. I could think of situations where maybe my alarm didn't go off and I need to rush to get to class. But certainly making it a habit of going to class every day in Uber, that's going to quickly eat away at your students' budget. As we mentioned too, it's totally normal if your student doesn't come with a large amount of extra money. We have students that range the full spectrum of socioeconomic status. And so it's normal for your student to not bookmark every weekend with a trip to another country. And as we mentioned, there are several excursions that are already included in your students' program costs. So encourage them to take advantage of those. We're going to release those dates when students get on site. And that's because students usually go on their excursions in care teams, and students learn about their care team at the very end of pre-departure and while they get on site. So we'll ask your student to hold off on booking any travel until they know for sure what their schedule is. This is also because on some locations, Fridays are used for experiential learning. So some professors might have a part of their class that's required that will meet for experiential learning on a Friday. And if your student doesn't attend because they took an early flight out to, another city, they're not going to get credit for that missed attendance. So we ask your student to hold off on making any flight purchases or Airbnbs until they get on site and they know what their actual schedule is. Another thing to know is local travel is very affordable. So for those students that are headed to Europe, make use of of trains, of buses, of inexpensive airlines. There's lots of cheap ways to explore the region without breaking the bank. And similarly for Buenos Aires, there's a ton of free or low cost activities to do in the city. It's an amazing metropolis of so many things to do. Your student will never run out of things to do. And so get to know the local region. And one of the key ways that your student will know if they're advancing on their financial well-being is if they can differentiate a tourist trap from a real experience, right? So if I look around and there's no locals, if everyone's speaking English, maybe this isn't the place that is the most affordable or the place that's most authentic. And students will yearn for that experience. So it's totally normal for students to spend their time instead looking for the most authentic places, where are locals eating, where are locals spending their money. That's typically where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. So it's totally normal for students to just settle in on their location and not spend every weekend traveling.
I think one other thing though, Mateo, if you don't mind for 1 second, that I want to
Yeah.
chime in there is just a reminder that all of our students are on the Verto journey for an academic journey to someplace else, whether that is a Verto channel school, a Verto direct transfer, partner school, or a non-partner school. And so in that case, the other challenge with students traveling all the time and whatnot is that besides that it can be costly, it's taking away from them focusing on their academics. And we don't want students, students all have these other plans. So we want them to enjoy the cities they're in. They're amazing. There's so much to do. There's so much to do locally, regionally without jet setting across the continent. So both for their wallets and for their academics, and I think back to myself when I was studying abroad, it's recommended to plan a little bit and say, okay, maybe once a month I go on a bigger trip, and the rest of the weeks I do maybe something local in the city. This weekend I do some day trips. You can do a lot that way, and it helps them to also keep their academics in a good spot where they finish the semester very satisfied, both with academics and with what they've gotten to see and learn from their local region. So that's another spin when you're connecting with your students and talking about budgeting, is reminding them of the purpose of why they're there and how important doing well on their semester at Verto is. And luckily, every single student at Verto is in the same shoes. They're all trying to do very well to continue on. So in that way, the peer energy is the same and everybody's goal is the same.
Cool. Thank you, Steph. Okay. So again, we're going to ask you a question. This is kind of like we'll share a little bit and you share a little bit. So our last question to you, let's say you get that text from your student that says, hey, I ran out of money already, and maybe it's sooner than you thought. Can you send more? Right? So this is where all of these lessons and maybe these conversations you had in pre-departure will come into play. So instead of putting you into a breakout group, because I think we're okay to just debrief it here, but if you were students, we'd put you in a breakout group. What would be your first response? What questions could you ask to your student? And what values might you bring in to teach something to your student in your response to this question, this text? So we'll take a couple responses in the chat. Do you know where you went off budget? That's a great one. Like, let's open up your recent transactions. Where are you spending the most money, and how can we get you back on track? What did you purchase that put you over budget? Totally. What have you been spending your money on? What do you plan on doing the rest of the month? Exactly. So what's your plan after What are you going to do differently to not run out of this money? Okay, so a change in habit, change in behavior. How can you prevent this in the future? Yeah, these are all great questions. I think for me, the value that comes into the play here, the Verto value, is the one of responsibility. So teaching students as adults now, you have a responsibility to stay within the budget that either you or as a family, your student has access to. So how can you lovingly keep them accountable to the budget that you or they have made together, to teach them responsibility? Because of course, when this year or semester ends, your student is going to continue their college experience. They're going to continue living independently. And the more they can absorb and learn in this experience, the better they're going to be prepared, not just for their Verto experience, but for their post-Verto plan as they continue on to their next path, whether it be one of our channel schools or beyond. Yeah, were their expenses beyond your control? So did you get sick? Was there emergency? Did you drop your phone in the river? We've seen that before. Trying to take some good selfies and students' phone drops. Cell phones are not cheap. Some things are cheaper abroad, but cell phones are not one of them, unfortunately. So, does your student have an extra couple $100 to maybe not replace their iPhone, but get a smartphone? Great. Well, I appreciate your reflections on these. And I hope that some of these questions will serve you as you think about the next 5 weeks. I know you have the day down, Steph, but I think it's like 5-6 week range. What do we have left of free departure? Yeah. So I hope these serve you well as you continue to support your student and get them ready for this experience. So a couple last frequently asked questions that we get at this sort of stage of pre-departure, and then we'll open it up for any more Q&A. And we should have some time for you to have breakout rooms by location as well. So first, students sometimes ask, can I work abroad? The short answer to that is no. Students are on for students that have a student visa, it's a student visa. So that applies for Seville, Florence, and Prague, meaning they are only legally in the country to study and not to work. So students cannot work locally. They can't work for a local company. They can't get a part-time job. That being said, some students, and I would say we have very rarely seen this, but the more sort of applied students and maybe organized students, some of them are able to get part-time jobs. For example, this resource here, we have no affiliation with this company, but Cambly is a website that students have used in the past to tutor English part-time in their free time. And it doesn't require a 4-year degree, unlike most tutoring apps. So for the more sort of really dedicated student, it is possible to work part-time, but keep in mind that should never be sort of physical in-person work with a local company, because that would be breaking their student visa, and we don't want anyone to be in that situation. Another question, how does my student handle their money on site? So thinking about physical money. So first we say to students, don't carry all your cards with you at once. And that also includes your passport. You shouldn't be going out with your passport. You don't need it. Have a form of ID, but not your physical passport. That should be kept away in your room along with your other belongings. But if you have multiple cards, keep them in different places so that if you misplace your wallet or something happens, you have access to another card, and you don't have to sort of scramble to figure out how you're going to get money. Also, don't carry large bills or all your money on your person or in the same pocket. So the locations that our students are in are used to having tourists in these cities, and pickpockets are very smart and good at what they do. And it'll be important for your student to be aware of where they're keeping their money, but also how much money they have. Don't make it easy for a pickpocket to take your things. We go over this, of course, during Discovery Week. We tell students about situational awareness, but this is important. Store money is a specific place in your drawer or bag where you keep your valuables in your student's room. This one's a common sense one. The door locks in all of our accommodations, so your student will have their key and they'll be able to ensure all their money and belongings are in a safe place. So anything else that you would add here, Steph?
Nope. This
Cool.
is great.
Will there be access to a safe? No, our sites don't typically give access to safes. Those aren't available in student rooms. Okay. Well, I'm going to pass it to you, Steph, for this last round.
All right, so not directly related to students' financial well-being on site, but a few brief notes surrounding finances from the Student Financial Services Department. Next, perfect. If you do have any questions regarding billing statements or reflected discounts or aid, anything like that, feel free always to email financialservices@vertoeducation.org. Even while your student's on site, we are resource. Reminder that if you are on a payment plan installments 1 through 3 are due prior to arriving on site. What this means is that payment plan installments 4 and 5, which are due September 1st and October 1st, your students are on site. They won't be in front of you, but you will still get the usual reminders from us, and we'll still be able to assist you. So, and your students will be able to email you those links for paying those installments. So we're just a email, phone call, or Zoom meeting away. Upcoming, if you are using a loan through University of New Haven, you'll be receiving instructions shortly in about 10 days with how to set up a refund method for direct deposit. And this is important because if you have requested what's called cost of attendance for your loan, it means that typically about $1,000, $2,000 more than the loan that can reimburse you for costs such as your flight or student spending money on site, etc. This loan, these funds can be set direct deposit into whatever bank account you put there, but only after ad drop week is finished. So the fastest way to get these funds are direct deposit. If you do not sign up for direct deposit, they will simply just sit on the student account until the end of the semester when the university will cut a check. So we'll say if you're using a loan, look for an email in about the next 2 weeks giving formal instructions for how to set that process up. If you have any external scholarships that are forthcoming, continue to send those to your billing provider, whether it's Verto or University of New Haven. I always remind families and students that just because you've paid your tuition in full doesn't mean that you can't continue to receive scholarships. You can receive scholarships anytime throughout your Verto semester or year. Send it to your billing provider if it will either count towards your tuition, or if your tuition is paid in full, the billing provider will cut a refund for you of any extra service tuition paid. So your student can continue both to receive and apply for scholarships, external scholarships, even while on semester. And if you are joining us for this full year, just looking ahead while we have you for spring 26 semester payment in full, or the first installment of the payment plan is due November 1st. So no action needed there, but always good to get dates and whatnot in front of people so that they can plan accordingly. Thanks, Mateo.
Right. Thank you, Steph. So we're moving into our last round of announcements. I would say, folks, if you do have any lingering questions, go ahead and add that to the Q&A or just put it in the good old chat. I think we're also doing a good job of managing questions there. But some important announcements. So first, tomorrow kicks off your students' global orientation. This is one of 3 virtual events that they will be required to attend starting tomorrow. So global orientation goes from July 22nd to July 30th. They choose one date and time to attend. This will trigger the launch of their onboarding course. So they'll be added into a course on Canvas, which is where they did their placement exams if they took them. And they'll have until their care team circle to complete this onboarding course. The second event that they'll attend is location orientation, August 12th to 14th. This is with their on-site staff. So they're going to go over their arrival instructions, specific details related to their location. They're going to meet their program director for the first time. And of course, the last event that they have is their care team circle, where they meet their peers that are in their care team circle and their student success advisor. This is sort of a last stop for questions before students depart. So all this is kicking off tomorrow. It's very important that your student attends these required events because we don't cover this information again once they get on site in Discovery Week. We fully expect everyone to have participated and know what was covered in these fundamental sessions. So please make sure your student is RSVPing, and we're going to be happy to see them there. We also will have a family pre-departure orientation to accompany the events. So The pre-departure orientation is specifically for students, but we know that you probably have some questions and want to know how to support your student. So we're going to host a family-oriented pre-departure orientation. This is where we'll share sort of what we've been covering with students in their events, and we'll also have time for question and answer. Our Dean of Students, Dr. James Arello, will be there as well to sort of set expectations for the semester as we transition from onboarding to on-site, which looks very different once your student is on-site. Communication channels look very different, and sort of the way that we work together to support your student will change. So please attend those family pre-departure orientations so that you can continue to support your student as they get ready for the experience on site. I should also mention, as we said in the beginning, your student and you have access to our location resources page that has a lot of great information related to your student's experience. So I would say before your student reaches out to their SOA, please have them look in the location resources to see if the answer is there. So for example, your student says, hey, I want to know what's the address for my study center. Well, that information is already available to them. Or I want to know what budget should I be bringing. That information is available to them. So please make sure that they've perused and know what's covered in the location resources. And then of course, if they can't find the answer, they can reach out to their friendly neighborhood student onboarding advisor who's happy to help them. Some extra announcements. Do you want to cover these stuff since this is your wheelhouse?
Sure. Extra announcements. The following items are past due. So if you are in the camp where you and your student have not yet purchased a flight, or perhaps you've purchased it but have not uploaded it, we are 5 weeks until arrival. Please do upload that so that on-site teams can plan for your student's arrival. Final official transcripts and any additional records are also due immediately. We know that some schools are still closed or whatnot, but please make sure that your student has submitted that. This is very critical for our Spain, Italy, and Prague students. Has your student received their visa back? If so, please ensure that they upload it to My Verto. This is a critical piece. If your student unfortunately does happen to lose a passport, Verto having a copy of their visa has saved us in a number of cases where the student is able to remain in country and complete the semester without having other challenges or other inconveniences that they have to go through. So please make sure that when your student gets that visa back that they upload it for us. And as a reminder, remaining in good financial standing by August 1st is payment in full or first 3 payments if on the payment plan, or a loans sent to your University of New Haven profile. That's all from student onboarding, and any questions, please connect with your student onboarding advisor. We're always happy to help.
One related to onboarding, Steph, is do you need the flight back to the US? So we strongly recommend that your student has proof of a return flight. And that is because first, for the Florence, for the Italy visa process, it's required. But secondly, because every country has sort of their politics when it comes to visitors, and they determine what criteria by which they allow people to enter their country. And we don't want your student to be in a circumstance where they are at the border and they're asked for a return flight and they don't have that information available to them. So avoid any really stressful scenarios and purchase your student's flight back home so that you can send them with that and they don't have to worry at all about any sort of border customs questions that come in, that a customs officer is in their right to ask a student as a sort of enforcer of local laws.
Yeah, thanks, Mateo. Actually, 2 more things on the visa thing. We're just starting the season where students will be getting their visas back. Most students receive their visas back 1 to 3 weeks prior to program start date. That is totally normal. If you are in Spain, you most likely applied with one of our group appointments. And so you've either received an email that your visa will be back around August 1st, or you'll be getting it back just days before. Either way, connect with your student onboarding advisor if you have questions. But this is here purely because we are just starting to see the time of year when people are starting to get it back. But 1 to 3 weeks prior to program start date is the most normal.
Thank you, Steph. Lastly, there were some questions about Family Day. So I have some unfortunate news for those who didn't get a ticket yet. We have waitlists open for 4 out of 5 of our locations. So Buenos Aires still has tickets, but other locations do have a waitlist at this point. So if you do want to sign up for the wait list, you're welcome to click the links that I put in the chat. I would say if you don't get a ticket, please still enjoy your experience, and you're perfectly welcome to join your student in arrivals. If you want to visit them at a different time, that's also okay. But just wanted to put those links in the chat because someone had asked. Cool. And some great visa news in the chat. So this is great. All right. So we're a few minutes over. I want to thank everyone for your time today. And we hope that we've given you some practical tools to start thinking about your students' financial self-authorship journey. How do they want to learn about themselves when it comes to money? This is big. They're going to be doing things they've never done before. And so I'm so glad that we get to work together in supporting your student as they make this big transition. And hopefully they're going to have a lot of fun along the way. And you're going to have very few bills to pay because they're going to be excellent at managing their personal finances. And you won't have to have any of these difficult conversations. So thank you, everyone, for your insights as well and participating in the chat and sharing what you know. At this point, we're going to open up breakout rooms. So if folks want to stay on, you're more than welcome to. These breakout rooms don't have a time limit. And basically, we open these rooms at the end of our family sessions to give you an opportunity to network with families whose student is going to the same location as your student. So if you'd like, you're welcome to stop by and say hello and what piece of advice you're going to give your student when it comes to finances. But really, there's no sort of topic. You're welcome to stay on as long as you'd like. I'll stay on for a few more minutes in case folks have any other particular questions. Otherwise, we'll conclude for today. Stay tuned for our August session. And we'll also see you for pre-departure orientation for families that starts in early August as well. So thanks everyone for your attention today. And we wish you a great start to the week and a great rest of the month. Thanks. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open up our breakout rooms. Let me see. Here we go. So I just opened them. So you should see the option to join one of 5 breakout rooms. You might need to click more in your Zoom toolbar, and or it might have a